I play with you?
You want to play with us? Okay. Never mind, she's just a girl.
You don't know how to be a girl.
I would like to be a girl. Didn't you want to be a girl? Enjoy.
Stu! What's up, bro? You okay? Let's go. Is this really for just boys? Can I not be a part of it? They think I will give up, but I know I am better than this. I'm gonna run like a girl, not giving in to this world. I'm gonna fight like a girl, I'm gonna do it like a girl. Run like a girl, not giving in to this world. I'm gonna fight like a girl, I'm gonna do it like a girl. I'm gonna run like a girl, not giving in to this world. I'm gonna fight like a girl, I'm gonna do it like a girl, like a girl, like a girl, like a girl. Like a girl, do it like a girl. I can do all that I want, never giving up on this. Not gonna let the world tell me who I'm not and who I should be. I'm gonna run like a girl, not giving in to this world. I'm gonna fight like a girl, I'm gonna do it like a girl. Run like a girl, not giving in to this world. I'm gonna fight like a girl, I'm gonna do it like a girl. I'm gonna run like a girl, not giving in to this world. I'm gonna fight like a girl, I'm gonna do it like a girl, like a girl, like a girl, like a girl, like a girl. Do it like a girl. Even when the whole world tells you to quit, get your back straight, head up, chin high, and never stop to run like a girl, not giving in to this world. I'm gonna fight like a girl, I'm gonna do it like a girl. I'm gonna run like a girl, not giving in to this world. I'm gonna fight like a girl, I'm gonna do it like a girl, like a girl. Do all that I want, like a girl. All this, like a girl. Like the world tell me, like a girl who I'm not and do it like a girl.
Let's play.
Hello, everybody. How are you guys? Yeah! Yo, mama! And hey, Suzanne. Who else is here? Max is here. And David is here. And I bet there's a little Irish man hiding back there somewhere. And possibly whoever. Hey, guys. All right. I've got some really fun taps for you today. I'm quite proud of this one. And not only that, but I have another one after this. 2 fabulous days of thinking. So without further ado, I will begin. Proof on how they're killing us. So I have a few things that that I've been looking at, and the first thing that I want to go through is okay. Why zebras? This is a discussion by Robert Spolosky. If you don't know who he is, he's some guy from some famous university that talks about human behaviors. And I've listened to him a lot and over the years, and he has his lectures online. They're very easy to listen to and watch. So I've often thought over this last year and a half about sharing them with you. And I think I'm going to. I have one, the last one he did from one of his classes. He has his entire class from about, I think it's 11 years ago, something like that, online. You can just watch them. Anyway, this is from a talk he did called Why Zebras Don't Get Ulcers and Stress and Health by Robert Spolensky. And so it is an hour and a half long, but I'm going to stop as we listen to it. And I'm going to show you the hello Carl there. Yes. and Mazel, nice to have you here. Okay. And so it's worth your 2 hours or 3 hours or however long it takes. It's worth it if you want to know. So come on a ride with me, and then I will throw you some tabs on what exactly is happening to the human species at this moment, according to my research, my Rodney research. Here we go.
Robert Sapolsky was my professor when we were students at Stanford University many moons ago. And Robert made a huge influence on my wanting to be a scientist. He was simply the most influential and outstanding, compelling professor at Stanford because of the way he connected with his students and because of his incredible gift at lecturing, which you're all about to witness. And as you might imagine, Robert has quite a number of impressive accomplishments in his career, including the MacArthur Genius Fellow, loads of highly influential scientific articles and research awards. But perhaps one of his greatest accomplishments are the books that have been so incredibly popular and so impactful to so many people that he's written. My personal favorites are The Trouble with Testosterone, A Primate's Memoir, and Why Zebras Don't Get Ulcers, which is the topic of today's lecture. And so let's please all join me in welcoming Dr. Robert Sapolsky to the stage.
Okay, first off, that's an impressive lineup. So I'm going to bring you something the next time I go live about whether or not the people that are in our neighborhood are actually real or not real. And I might have some proof that some of them aren't. So stick with me. What this is saying is telling me so much. All these degrees they have, it gives them this idea that they know something they don't know. These guys sit around and lecture about ethics of doing what he's about to describe. And then I'm going to bring you a video about how this is being employed in war. And then I'm going to show you a whole bunch of tabs about where the research is and exactly what's going on, and tell me that they don't know and it's not. I got this side to it. I'm with you. They're orchestrating it, but here's the side I don't know everyone is considered. So now listen to what he's going to describe here about why zebras, why animals. You're going to hear this word a lot. Why animals have a different fight, or freeze flight, freeze, or fight reflexes than we do, and what actually happens to our systems when we remain in these heightened states. This is going to lead us down the road of why bondage is such a popular thing at the moment, and of course, one of our fears being the loss of autonomy, and then backed up with the loss of rejection, or with rejection, the fear of rejection. So those two in combination are what's happening right as you're going in the cusp of puberty, which is where humans are right now. So as an entire species. So listen real carefully to what he's saying and think about it in terms of a whole large macro scale of what happens to us. And when this is happening, how it affects us and why we are different.
Well, let me start off by saying, actually, these lights only give me a dim impression that there's a lot of primates out there. So I'm not entirely sure what I'm seeing here, but let me start off by thanking Justin and Peter. It is a delight to be here and a delight to see one's ex-students flourishing and all that sort of stuff amid it making me feel very elderly. Okay, so let me start off. I just got here a couple of hours ago, so I pretty much don't know anyone here. So I feel empowered to ask all sorts of invasive personal questions of you guys. Okay, how many of you here have a family history of heart disease? Cancer, high blood pressure, ulcers, stroke. Wow, there's a hand there that's not even going down between the questions. Okay, that is not good. How many of you have a family history of somebody with a really bad case of leprosy? No hands. How about that cousin you're stuck sitting next to at Thanksgiving, the one going to the bathroom every 10 minutes because of the dysentery? Not that either. How about that extra special relative who's just teeming with liver parasites the size of your fists? Not much there either. And all things considered, this is not very surprising. Very few of us in this room seriously worry about smallpox or scarlet fever. Few of us get malaria during the rainy season. Few of our mothers died in childbirth. Nobody in this room is malnourished. We're not like normal animals. We don't get sick the way normal animals do. We don't die the way they do. Basic normal mammalian death. You drink some contaminated water and you're dead from dehydration 2 days later. And what do? We spend 80 years having our bodies go to hell on us. So we do, oh great, I gotta listen to that for the next hour. This is actually fabulous news, because this is westernized disease. For the most part, we are not plagued by infectious diseases, diseases of poor nutrition, poor hygiene. Instead, we live well enough and long enough to slowly fall apart over time. And this is a magnificent advance in the human experience. Okay, just to give you a sense of it, like a little more than a century ago, 1900, what do you think were the leading causes of death in the United States? Tuberculosis, good, what else? Childbirth. If you were a woman between ages 20 and 40, the single medically riskiest thing you could do in 1900 was attempt to give birth. What else was up there? Influenza, pneumonia, tuberculosis. Influenza, number one on the list. The flu, nobody dies of the flu anymore. 1918, worst winter of World War I, people being blown out of trenches all over Europe. And if you were sent to the war that winter, your chances of surviving were better than if you got the flu. 8 million war deaths in World War I, 40 million dead civilians that winter from the flu. Nobody under age 100 dies of the flu anymore. Instead, we die of these totally bizarre diseases that never used to exist on this planet in any sort of frequency. Totally weird diseases like heart disease and cancer and diabetes and Alzheimer's. And what you suddenly realize is this is a very novel realm we've entered in terms of making sense of which of us are sick and which are healthy. Okay, 20,000 years ago, you're some 20-year-old hunter-gatherer and you have screwed up big time. You've made a major medical mistake. You've just eaten some reed buck riddled with anthrax. And the medical outcome's absolutely clear. You've got like a 3-day life expectancy. These days, as a 20-year-old, you a major medical mistake. You decide a healthy diet consists of a lot of red meat and saturated fats and maybe a drink every other day or so. And it's not at all clear what the outcome's going to be. You may be dead in your grave at 50, or you may be running marathons with your grandkids when you're 85. And in lots of ways, the central question for Westernized medicine is, so why do some of us last to 50 and some to 85?
Okay, so now I'm going to show you some tabs real quick. I'm going to do some tabs here. Okay, so see some interesting things. So as he's mentioning the top diseases in the world today, so the top deadliest diseases today. My birds are having a moment. This is according to the WHO. So you've got, this is according to the WHO. Now, the people that are supposed to be taking care of us, is this up there? Okay, yeah. And so you got heart disease or coronary artery disease. And this is what's interesting. It talks about the impact, the risk factors. Risk factors include high blood pressure, high cholesterol, smoking, family history of CAD, diabetes, and being overweight. Now, several of these things are their fault. Their fault. They've got us on high cholesterol, high fat diets. It's their food. They're the ones that sold us cigarettes, as you saw. And I think I used that as I don't remember. I have some really fabulous images. The diabetes, again, the food they sell us, and being overweight yet again. So this is, in fact, a man-made disease caused by the very people who are in this video, supposedly trying to help us. They've created this. And this is its outcome, your risk factors. But here's how you can reduce those. You can exercise quickly, maintaining a healthy weight, eat a balanced diet, low in sodium and high in fruits and vegetables. Don't smoke, and drink only in moderation. So don't forget your box of HelloFresh. Don't forget to go to the gym and buy that membership and order your food and eat a balanced diet. You're not allowed to smoke, so that's why we're making it ridiculously expensive. It's not saving us any money. We've already dissected that cancer, and now we're moving on to another one. And I don't believe smoking is the cancer-causing agent, and I'll show you some tabs on that. Another one is stroke. Here's another one. The risk factors. Do you have high blood pressure? Again. Stress-related, they're doing. Do you have a history of stroke? Again, stress-related, they're doing. Do you smoke and also use oral contraception? Of course, they're doing. Are you African American? Well, that's your fault. And are you a chick? Damn. And then it says that you have lower respiratory in the lower chest. You get the flu easier. And you have pneumonia and bronchitis and tuberculosis. These are the top things killing people. And here are your risk factors. Well, the flu in itself. So clearly we don't want to give you that, do we? We have poor air quality, and exposure to lung irritants. All they're making, smoking, they're making a weak immune system. Well, they made us all fucking be washing our hands 100 times. And crowded daycare centers. Again, they're doing. Asthma comes from poor air quality. They're doing. And of course, HIV. Well, we all know who came up with AIDS. All of these things that we're dying of, they've given us. They have Munchausen by proxy. They're sickos. Look at that. It's another one killing us. Hey, Teddy Nukes. Welcome. Did I say hi to you, Dale? I did not. Hello. Cancers. Oh, he's going to say something interesting. But again, we all know that cancer is caused by other things. things that they've created for us. Diesel fumes, exposure to global warming, That's it. Diabetes, again, they made it. They want to make you sick and make you better with their medicines and their special blue and red pills. Don't take either pill. How's that? Both of them keep you in the matrix either way. Alzheimer's disease and dementias. Now, see, this is one of their favorites because this is longevity research. They want to know how to live forever. So they have to make sure a whole fucking bunch of people get Alzheimer's disease so that while they wait out the apocalypse underground, they don't have this problem. And of course, here's some of the things that you have higher risk for: the inheriting genes and a history, and being over 65 is a physical age, Down syndrome, an unhealthy lifestyle, being a chick, if you've ever had any head trauma, and being shut off from your community or having poor engagement with other people for extended periods of time, like 2 years. Are we going to have an uptick of Alzheimer's in the next 10, 15 years? I'm going to say, yeah, a whole fucking smack load of them. Anyway, that's just how I feel about things. And then over here, I found another article about the top 10 most prescribed top selling medications. Oh my God. No. And let's see, the thyroid drug Synthroid continues to be the nation's most prescribed medication for a thyroid. Now, I didn't mention anything about thyroid problems over here. So when it says that's the #1 sold, I thought, what? Hot's not killing people. But it gives you this hyperthyroidism. It's an underactive thyroid disease, and it's been the top prescribed medication for a long time. Now, do you know what this is? Oh, looky there. Stress in your thyroid. What's the connection? Yeah, stress and hyperthyroidism. Your thyroid works in tandem with your adrenal glands. The adrenal glands, which are above your kidneys, can handle small amounts of stress. And when you encounter stress, they release cortisol, which enhances various body functions. I can't read the chat, so I'll pop over here for a second and make sure I'm not missing anything to, yeah, I'm well. Ding, ding, ding. They say, just don't call them. Don't tell them you're sick. They won't show up. Okay. All right. So the impact of stress on the thyroid occurs, I want boiling water slowly on your body's metabolism. This is another way stress and weight gain are linked. Obesity, diabetes, they're all linked. Stress, the thyroid function slows down stress, and these hormone levels fall. Also, the conversion of a T4 hormone and a T3 will not occur, leading to a higher level of reverse T3 insulin resistance. Anyway, you can see what I'm trying to say. So then they give you some health. This is on healthline.com. They give you some ways to help reduce your stress. You can eat right. Think about your vitamins. Don't forget to take lots of iron, copper, and zinc, because we're going back into the iron ages, the metal ages. Sleep well. Don't put your watch on and keep your blue light in the room, and sleep well with your meditative hertz of the planets, probably zapping crap in your head while you're sleeping in. Because I've got some other stuff for another stream about what they do to you when you're asleep, what they can do today to you when you're asleep and you don't know it. And we have these things in our fucking house, listening and receiving and transmitting all day long and all night long. You can relax. I don't know if you're going to be able to do that. Paranoia is just a click away. That's because, oh, that's Poopa War. Either way, paranoia is on its way. And then, that one's for the next one. Okay, let me go back to the video now. And we're going to listen to him for a little bit longer. And I'm going to pull up some more things that he's going to say here in a bit, where he's going to talk about our infertility. And then he's also going to talk about why we're shorter. And I'll show you the evidence and the research that backs up all these claims. This was uploaded 4 years ago, and they've known about all this time, and yet they are doing nothing to stop it. Now, who cares about humanity? Them? No, because they already know what they could be doing right now if this was a real pandemic. They know what they could be doing to help us all through it, but they're not doing that. Because that's not what this is about. So we can all go on all the other streams, but I'm going to show you another view of the model in the middle of the room called the pandemic that's going to have an outcome of prescription, pharmy, save my life, anything to make it stop. Sounds like abuse to me. Sounds like Munchausen syndrome to me. That's a psychological disorder that causes people to slowly poison and kill the people they claim to love so much. Think about that while you're listening to this. Okay, let me go back to my tabby tabs. All right, we're going to listen for a little bit longer. Hey, Davy boy. Hey, Squirrel's World. And Desert Goat. Did I miss anybody? If I missed you, welcome. All right, here we go.
Some of it's got to do with like nuts and bolts biology, what your liver does with cholesterol or stuff like that. But some of it's got to do with questions nobody ever had to ask before in medicine. Totally bizarre questions like, what's your psychological makeup? Or what's your social status? Or how do people with your social status get treated in your society? Or how about this one? Get the answer to this question, and you will have done more good for the health of humanity than anyone since like Jonas Salk inventing the polio vaccine. Why is it that when we feel like nobody loves us, we eat Oreo cookies? Answer that one, and you have just solved half the cases of diabetes in this country. This is totally bizarre stuff. That has something to do with which of us are healthy or sick. That has everything to do with it. And what we've entered is this very strange world when we look at the diseases that do us in, these diseases of slow accumulation of damage from lifestyle over time. These are predominantly diseases that can be caused by or be made worse by stress. And most of us in this room will have the profound westernized luxury of dropping dead someday of a stress-related disease. So nonetheless, amid that great news, it's a good thing if that happens later rather than sooner. So it's worth learning about this. Okay, we start off with definitions. I start off with a word I guarantee all of us had in 9th grade biology. With any luck, you have not thought about this word since then. Do you remember homeostasis? Homeostasis, having an ideal body temperature, having an ideal level of glucose in your bloodstream, having an ideal everything, being in homeostatic balance. A stressor is anything in the outside world that knocks you out of homeostatic balance. You're a zebra, a lion has leapt out, ripped your stomach open, and your innards are dragging in the dust, and you still need to get out of there. This counts as being out of homeostatic balance. Or you're that lion who's half starved to death, and if you don't chase down that zebra successfully, you're not going to survive the night. Short-term physical crisis. And what you do at that point is you turn on the stress response. You secrete adrenaline and 11 other hormones I won't torture you with. What you do is you reestablish homeostatic balance. That's all you need to know about the subject if you're a zebra or a lion. If you're human, though, you got to expand the definition in a critical way. Yes, a stressor can be when your body's been knocked out of homeostatic balance. In addition, a stressor can be when you think you're just about to be knocked out of homeostatic balance. If it turns out that you're right, that's great. An anticipatory stress response. Woo, here comes the elephant. Maybe I'll increase my blood pressure now before it stomps me rather than after. That could be very adaptive. On the other hand, if you think you're just about to be knocked out of homeostatic balance and you really aren't about to be, and you think that way all the time, there are medical ways of describing you. You're being neurotic as hell. You're being anxious. You're being paranoid. You're being hostile. Try to describe global warming to a hippo, and it's going to have no idea what you're getting all upset about.
Okay, so you've heard me say many, many times, it's the perceived fear. Your fear of heights is the perception you could fall, not the actual falling. It's the perception of. And so that can hold you in a state of frozen. It can keep you still. And it throws you off your balance, is what he's saying there. So they don't actually have to release a pandemic. They only have to let you believe there's a pandemic. Your perception of this, I predicted last year, I said, this might have just been a dud. And it was meant to kill a lot of people, and it didn't. Or its intention was exactly what it looks like it is now, just basically a fear fest. And fear fest keeps you frozen. It keeps you in a state of confusion where you can't make a logical decision. 1 minute the vaccine is killing you, the next minute the flu is killing you. And on the news, you don't know the difference because both sides are playing each other. And when I do my other stream on AI, I'm going to show you how the music industry is using both sides to play against each other with a couple of little virtual, real, or probably I'm going to submit for your approval. Unreal. I'm going to submit for everyone's decision on whether or not I've given enough evidence that they are not real people. And if we couldn't figure out how to prove that they are or aren't, because I don't believe they are. And so we just have to have a perception of fear, and it keeps us there. The perception of, I see masks, I'm fearful. I sit in a state of hypersensitive activity. And what happens to the mind? This is why police officers, this is why burglars, this is why rapists punch you in the face, punch you in the head, hit you in the head, because they need to disorient you, okay? That's why they go for the head. And the head makes you unable to catch your breath. It makes you unable to see. You got stars here in a state of confusion. And it makes you unable to respond to them well. So they can, basically, it's an ambush, okay? An ambush has the exact same effect when they come out of the woods or out of the, I didn't see them. I don't know. They're over here. They're over there. I don't know. And you're just shooting at people, and you're probably killing your own people at some point. And I'm sure that happens, because why wouldn't it? You'd be scared. You wouldn't know. It's like being in a dog fight. Every dog gets bit in a dog fight. You ever been in a mosh pit in high school? Do you remember those? You just end up in the middle. You're like, fuck, I don't want to be here. But you got dragged in it somehow. Okay. So if you don't realize that your perception of fear is as scary as the actual event. So for someone to be robbed and shot with a gun, or robbed and just held at gunpoint, their body had the same response. And here's where you're going to get into the pleasure pain centers of the mind. And so let me show you a couple things about that. Okay. So this is from Michigan News, the University of Michigan. And it was just a pretty simple. We have some shows on right now. Oh, I got to change my screen. I'm sorry. You had 50 Shades of Grey show up. And then you have whatever the fuck this weird, I'm going to rape women in red dresses garb. I didn't know what the fuck that show is all about. But nonetheless, we can rape adult women. And we can't, I don't know the amount. And I'm not, here's the thing, I'm not for that either. But, they take one show off because it shows a teenage girl hitting on a man. And then we have another show that shows Matthew McConaughey sticking his hand down a little girl's fucking pants. And then you got another show that's showing him raping women and using them as cattle breeders, and 50 Shades of Grey. I don't know. And all of the furries and your pleather and whatever gimp. I don't know what they do. Pleasure pain. Studies show the brain's pleasure chemical is involved in response to pain too. Now, why am I telling you this? Because what I'm suggesting here, hey Taurus, hey Paul and Steelic, Nice to have you guys. Here's what I'm suggesting. I'm suggesting that while they're torturing us, they're also putting basically pornography in front of everyone. At the same time, that's what child molesters do in order to get their victims to be okay with the touching. And that is what's happening right now. I'm being completely controlled. We're in a loss of autonomy. I cannot leave my house. My body is responding to this as if it is pain and discomfort and anger. And all the while, they're showing me show after show on Hulu and Netflix of basic sex. And then all the video games are murder. And then we're going to want to know why we're going to be so confused when this, you know what this creates? Just think for a second what this would create. Just stop for 1 minute. Think logically. You don't need to have a degree in psychiatry or ecology to know that if you have a group of people that can't tell the difference between pleasure and pain and have a complete disconnect from reality, who have not been able to hold long-term, close relationships of community with each other, you end up with the purge. That's a fact, Jack. That is a fact, Jack. I can pull up the research, show you each and every one of the results of those things, and you put them all together, and you have a recipe for disaster. And they know this. And they're doing nothing but putting it in front of everybody's face and selling it to you more. So the pleasure pain response, this is what he's talking about. When we're talking about the fight, flight, or fear, just remember, I want you to know that this is playing out in front of your face if you haven't figured it out yet. And now I'll play some more. Okay. Let me pull it back up where I can keep the mic muted. And then when he gets to the next section, I'll mute and I'll show you a couple more tabs. First, I wanted to ask, are you finding this interesting? There's like 23 people in here, so I'm kind of assuming you are, but I'm trying to figure out what I want to keep doing with the channel. I'm coming up on my 18 months now, and, you know, I'm starting to just get discouraged. So if you like the topics I'm bringing, that's awesome. I would appreciate you letting me know that. You can just say yay or nay. Because if you leave me a thumbs up or down, I won't. You can do either one. We take all thumbs. We're not thumbists in here. Okay. Hello, Vern Vision. And AKA Zensomniac. Zensomniac. Oh, that's a cute name. I didn't get to say hi to you yet. I think I just. Okay, awesome, guys. Yay, I need attaboys too, so I appreciate it. All right, here we go.
If that's the critical point, we do. The critical point of the whole thing is we turn on the exact same stress response as that zebra running for its life or a lion running for a meal, and we turn it on for purely psychological reasons. And that's the punchline of the entire field. That's not what it evolved for. For 99% of beasts on this planet, stress is 3 minutes of screaming terror, after which it's either over with or you're over with. And what do? We turn on the same stress response for 30-year mortgages. And that's not what it is for. And what we see here is this is why we and other really cognitively sophisticated primates are the ones who get mowed over by stress-related disease. This is a system that evolved for dealing with short-term physical crises, and we turn it on for chronic psychosocial stress. Now, listening to this description, something should seem sort of questionable, though. I'm describing, okay, the stress response. You turn this on. If you're a zebra, you're injured, you're bleeding, you're hypotensive, or if you're the lion, you're starving, you're hypoglycemic. These are very different physical states. And one of the things they pound into your head in biology is your body comes up with a very specific solution for a very specific challenge. If you're hot, you don't shiver. Your body does something very differently than that. Yet here's the stress response, which is the exact same thing whether you're injured, starving, too hot, or too cold. Why should you turn on the same stress response in all these circumstances? And this was a question wrestled with by the guy who's officially sort of the godfather of stress and health. This was an Austrian physician in the 1930s named Hans Selye, who started the whole field because he was very smart and very intuitive and very insightful and very creative. And apparently he was totally lame at handling lab rats. And this is how he started the field. Selye was this young assistant professor. He was at McGill University, Montreal, and he was looking for some research project, and some biochemist down the hall had isolated some hormone out of somebody's pancreas or something. Nobody knew what the stuff does. So Selye decides, that's it, I'm going to figure out the effects of this pancreatic stuff on the body. So what do? You go down the hall, you get a bucket load of the pancreatic stuff from your buddy, you come back, and you start injecting lab rats. And apparently, Selye simply was not very good at handling lab rats. So he's in there every day with the rats, injecting the rats and dropping the rats and chasing the rats, and the rats chasing him, and half the morning with a broom getting them out from underneath the sink. Months of this goes by, and he discovers something amazing. All of the rats have stomach ulcers. Selye is euphoric. He's just discovered the effects of this pancreatic crud on the body. It gives you a peptic ulcer. Now, fortunately, being a good scientist, Selye was also running a control group, rats that he's injecting every day with saline instead of the pancreatic stuff. So he's in there with the control rats, injecting them and dropping them, chasing them, chasing him. He checks out the control rats, and they all have stomach ulcers. Okay, so your average scientist at this point gives up and goes to business school. But Selye thinks about this, and he says, this is totally screwed. I'm seeing the exact same thing in the controls and the experimentals. It's got nothing to do with the pancreatic stuff. What do they have in common? Well, I'm pretty inept at handling these guys. They can't be having such a hot time here. Maybe what I'm seeing is some sort of non-specific response of the body to generalized unpleasantries. And Selye's insight was to, at that point, systematically expose rats to generalized unpleasantries. Put some of them up on the roof of the building in the winter, or down in the boiler rooms, or rooms with loud noise, or rooms filled with cat pee, or who knows what. And he always sees the same thing. They get stomach ulcers. We know exactly what Selye had just discovered. This was the tip of the iceberg of stress-related disease. And Selye was the guy who popularized what was this obscure term from metallurgy about torsional strain on metals. He's the one who said these animals are under stress, and they turn on certain systems in their body that saves them from the stress. But if they turn it on for too long, you get sick. Everybody thought he was out of his mind because, again, you're trained, your body solves specific challenges in very specific ways. And here's Selye with his imaginary stress response that gets turned on exactly the same if you're injured, starving, too hot, too cold, or on a blind date. Why should you turn on the same exact stress response in all these circumstances? And it turns out it makes a great deal of sense, because whether you are that zebra or that lion, if you're going to survive the crisis, there's certain things you need to do with your body. First off, above all else, you need energy. Not energy tucked away in your fat cells for some building project next spring, energy right now to hand to whichever muscles are going to save your neck. And with the onset of stress, you secrete adrenaline and a bunch of other hormones, and they go to the storage sites in your body, your liver, your fat cells. They mobilize energy out of storage form, dump it into the circulation. It's like you go to the bank and you empty out the savings accounts and turn it into cash, circulating glucose, and you hand it over to whichever muscles are going to save you. Makes wonderful sense whether you were that zebra or that lion. The next thing you do makes perfect sense as well. You've just done all this amazing biochemistry and dumped all this energy in your bloodstream. You want to deliver it as fast as possible to your exercising muscles. Your heart speeds up, your blood pressure increases, your breathing rate, you increase your cardiovascular tone, all as part of the strategy. Get that glucose, get that oxygen to your thigh muscles in 2 seconds instead of 3, you're that much more likely to survive. Now, the next things you do during stress make perfect sense, which is you turn off all the long-term building projects. If there's a tornado due this afternoon, you don't spend the day outside gardening. You don't worry about long-term projects until you know there's a long-term. You shut down everything that is not critical. You shut down digestion. By definition, if you were that lion.
Okay, I wanted to, what he's talking about, the body shuts down. So when it's in that state of the releasing of the stress hormones, then the body starts to shut down. So parts of it are not gonna fuck. Hang on, I had a moment where I got excited and I raised my heart rate and I lose where I'm at. And I'll show you where that is. He's about to talk about exactly. This is how come I know all this, because I suffer from this. When I get excited, when I find there's real reasons to why these things happen to you. I'm not a psychopath, and I'm not having hallucinations or whatever the fuck ever weird things they like to stick on me. I don't have none of that stuff. There's a logical reason for what's going on. And I had to figure it all out myself. And this is where, these are the dots that I put together there. The constant state of, it causes you. Okay, so when you're in that, so you forget about mowing your grass and these kinds of things. Now imagine it's 2021. They've had everybody locked down. Now we have all these kids who are coming out of school, entering young adulthood, and see no future for themselves. They've gotten fat and lazy. Like a sloth, which is one of their favorite little animals to make, backpacks and stuff out of. And so again, you could just see it all right in front of you. The industry is selling you sloths as the cute animal for the day. They were selling us owls 10 to 15 years ago. And before that, it might have been penguins. I don't know. They go around and sell you a different animal. But oddly enough, we have sloths and llamas in the run right now. And it's crazy. Target. Jesus. Target. Okay. So when you think about these things and you recognize what's happening, now you see why your suicide rates are up. There's nothing to do. It seems hopeless. And what he's saying is you give up on anything that holds the future in it. And so you're not thinking about mowing your grass. Now imagine that's happening in a split second. Now we're talking about something that's happening on a slow drip. And now you end up with suicides, which we all know are really high amongst which age group? Those going into their next stage of development, their young adultness. The teenagers and the young adults are dropping like fucking flies with this. And here's why. This is the reason why that is. Because our autonomic systems are malfunctioning due to the abuse that they are giving to us. And these children see no future. Therefore, there's no reason to buy a lawnmower. I won't fucking have a lawn to mow. And they become lazy sloths, one of the 7 deadly sins. And I'll go back to the video.
And you are not staggering up from some all-you-can-eat buffet. And if you were that zebra, the energy you're mobilizing for your muscles, you're mobilizing it from fat cells in just a couple of seconds. Digestion is slow. It takes forever. It costs a fortune. You're trying to avoid being somebody's lunch. Don't worry about digesting breakfast. And we all know the first step of that. Suppose you get stressed speaking in public. What happens? Your mouth gets dry. You've stopped secreting saliva, the first step of shutting down the whole gastrointestinal tract. With the onset of stress, you shut down growth, you shut down reproduction, big, expensive, optimistic things to be doing with your body. And this is no time for it. You're running for your life. There's a lion 2 steps behind you. Ovulate some other time.
Okay, so now let me show you some other tabs. So what he's saying there is, again, when you're in these stressful situations, you're not thinking about a future, you're not going to be ovulating, you're not going to be having babies. And on top of them already using and manipulating our DNA with things like medicines and foods and hormones and chicken, they're also using this. This is the second stage of it, if you will, or it's all being done at the same time. But you can't forget what this is doing to the body. So and all those years that women have been taking birth control pills, I was always taught that if you don't use it, you lose it. So if you're not ovulating, you're actually changing the future where we won't ovulate and getting rid of females. Stay females, stay males. Stay where you are. Anyway, you can stay males and females together. I don't care about if you're gay. I don't. But don't do whatever this stuff is. Wherever we're whatever this transhumanism, not transgender, transhuman. Transhuman. It's different. That's all. This is technology we're talking about, not somebody who's confused about their sexual preference when they're 9. We're talking about grown-ass adults right now wanting to combine into a single species so they can become gods again. You know, the ones that were single species. That's what I'm afraid of, not the transgenders. Don't care, okay? So I don't need any ugly emails. But this is what happens. So right now, this is 2014, revised in 2017. So this entry focuses on the number of births per woman in a population. And the fertility rate, let me see. Over the last, the global average fertility rate is below 2.5 children per woman today. Over the last 50 years, the global rate has halved. It's been cut in half. And over the course of modernization, societies and the number of children per woman decreases substantially. And the pro-modern era fertility rates of 4.5 to 7 children per woman was common. And at that very high rate, mortality and kept the population low. But see, we don't have baby mortality anymore. So then they're afraid of overpopulation, which we don't have. We don't have. That's a lie. We do not have overpopulation. They're just greedy motherfuckers, and they don't want to share. So as health improves, the mortality of and the reason is because they won't let us just die anymore. They want us to live forever. And because they want to, there it is, the world. I didn't mean to click on that, but clearly world population growth. That's what they're afraid of. But it's only because they're not dying anymore. They want to live forever, and only so many people can live forever. Otherwise, people you can only have so many people in your community before everybody starts fighting. That's with any animal. That's why birds are territorial. Basically, what this is saying is that across the board, in all cases, fertility is going down and infertility is going up. And with the amount of money that is spent on in vitro, Ouija, excellent comment, plastic is killing. Think about what's in all that stuff. Think about, and that goes through generation, through DNA. Your DNA is in fact altered every time. That is a lie. Don't listen to Snoops. They don't know. What's funny is that it took me 2 seconds to find a research paper by the Cambridge University or whatever those fuck sticks that says that even a cold can alter your DNA. So they can go fuck themselves, Snoops. That is absolute. There is no, that's not even nobody reading. Nobody's even. That they're just denying. That has to be an old program or something they kept alive because they're retards. Anyway, that's a lot. I could go through an entire 4 hours of just Snoops and how easy it is to disprove Snoops with just a couple snoopity snoop tabs. Anyway. All right, oops, I got to change it back to Okay. It's Beaver. Hey, it's Beaver. Hey, Beaver. Yes, awesome. They do. It's sick. It's sick. I have another video. I have a lot to share. I've been doing a lot of stuff the last couple of days. Okay, so back to the video now. And I'll be quiet and let it play until it gets to another part where I have some tabs or I feel like I need to say something. Hey, Emerald Owl, how are you? And the virus is a scam. It's a scam. It's a scam. I love it. Okay, I'll be quiet now. Here we go.
Don't do it right now. Hit puberty next week, grow antlers some other day. Don't even think about sperm. With the onset of stress, you shut down growth, you shut down tissue repair. Every sex hormone on earth disappears from the bloodstream. Do it later if there is a later. Next, so you're that zebra and your innards are dragging in the dust. This might be a good time to perk up your immune system a little bit, just in case of some infective stuff. With the onset of stress, immune defenses are enhanced. Finally, a whole bunch of hormones secreted during stress get into your brain. And short term, their effects are fabulous. They sharpen memory. They increase glucose and oxygen delivery to your brain. Your sensory thresholds are sharper. You even release this neurotransmitter dopamine, which makes you feel good. Your memory is working. That's that flashbulb memory. Where were you when you heard the news? I'm willing to bet every single person in this room, no matter how long they live, you will all remember exactly where you were when you heard the news that Miley Cyrus is joining the Supreme Court. I mean, some stuff you just file away forever because it's important. Your brain needs to get a signal. This one, do not forget. So what you see here is everything going on here is exactly what you want to do if you're that zebra or that lion. You're mobilizing energy, you're delivering where it's needed, you're shutting off unessentials, you're fighting infections, you're thinking more clearly. All you have to do to appreciate that is look at a couple of weirdo human diseases where people can't do this. One of them is called Shy-Drager syndrome, another one is Addison's disease. These are not diseases where, oh, you're now more at risk for certain cancers. This is like somebody with undiagnosed Addison's goes running for the commuter bus one morning and drops dead from hypoglycemic shock. So we've gotten our first critical take-home message here, which is if you plan to get stressed like a normal mammal, you had better turn on your stress response or else you got about a 30-second life expectancy. For most of us, though, the far more important take-home message revolves around, so what if you're turning on the stress response too often, too long, for purely psychological reasons? And what you get there then is disease at the other end of it. Now, Selye was the first person to wrestle with this issue. Why is it that chronic stress makes us sick? And he came up with an explanation in the 1930s, and it dominated the field for the next 40 years, which was too bad because he was totally wrong. Okay, here's what he thought was going on. Along comes a stressor, knocks you out of homeostatic balance. You turn on the stress response, you reestablish homeostasis, but the stressor goes on for too long. And thus you enter what Selye called the exhaustion phase. You run out of the stress response. Your adrenals run out of adrenaline, your pituitary runs out of its stress hormones. It's like your military runs out of ammunition and you're just left defenseless there with the stressor pummeling you. Turns out this was totally imaginary. There was no such thing as this exhaustion phase. No organism on Earth has ever been so stressed that it runs out of adrenaline. You don't deplete the stress response. The problem is that after a while, it's not that your military is running out of ammunition. After a while, you're spending so damn much on your military that you don't do health care or social services or education or any of that stuff. And like after a while, the stress response is more damaging than the stressor, especially.
What he's saying there is that's that slow burn we're talking about. And so our bodies are sitting in that state and they're not getting a chance to have moments in between. And so everything else suffers. You end up sitting in your chair all the time. You end up on your couch. Probably each and every one of us are sitting in our favorite spot for the COVID. We could take a picture of this and have a selfie club of just what was your favorite spot during the COVID and the Lucy, and then everyone would have one. That's what he's talking about there. And so if you can just imagine, now this is happening on a mass scale. This is everyone, right? Everyone, whether they want to accept it or not, because even those that are walking around and happy with their masks and their loosey juicies, they're still living in fear. They just don't realize it yet, because every time they see someone who doesn't have a nappy on their face, they have a response. Now, they might not come out and want to punch them in the face or have something rude to say. They not everyone is going to have an outward response, but everyone will in fact have an inward response, something that you won't recognize probably even in yourself. It's an unconscious response. And that's because our unconscious is what saves us from the lion, right? That's that sixth sense that tells us to perk our ears. We really think that it's a crack or a creak, but it's not. They're already ready. They're already having a feeling, and they're already kind of getting there, right? You can start to see them, that feeling something's just not right. You ever watch like out there, this nature? Hey, baby! You can see it, in them. It's as if there's a knowing, especially in the older ones, and especially in more intelligent type animals, right? A knowing. And so that's something we don't recognize, because we don't realize that we own a sixth sense yet. Maybe we do, but I'm not talking about you. I'm talking about them, you. And so they don't recognize that's what's happening. So they're sitting in it, and it continually vibrates in their body. Stress. Little hits every time. You imagine a child that gets hit a lot, and then you might never get hit again, but you'll still flinch when your buddy goes to reach for the beer. Do you know what I'm saying? You'll still have a flinch moment. You'll still be a little hypersensitive. That's your autonomic system being totally fucked up from the amount of smacks you'd had. And that's what they're doing here. They're going to open it. They're not going to open it. They're going to save you with the shot. Now the shot's killing you. They're going to give you some medicine. No, you can't have that one. And it's just back and forth. And you're going to, this president, and I'll tell you another one that went back and forth. Here's another blows to the head. When they go, we're going to impeach Trump. No, we're not. We're going to save Trump. And no, we're going to put Biden in. No, we're going to keep Biden out. And the whole country was just like picking sides, picking teams, picking the bigger beast. I don't know, one head of the other, like we say in here. So what is it about them out there that can't get them to see what we're seeing? That's what I want to know. So anyway, okay. Let me, in your dreams, Ouija. Okay. So I'm going to go back to playing this, and I'll be quiet again. And then we'll keep going. Okay.
Especially if the stressor was some psychological nonsense. Everything you're doing here is penny wise and dollar foolish. It's inefficient. It's less than optimal. All of this is built around, it's an emergency. It's an emergency. Fix later, grow later. Don't do it right now. And if every day is an emergency, you pay the price for it. At the metabolic level, mobilize energy because the lion's running after you, no problem at all. Mobilize energy from your storage sites chronically because you're chronically psychologically stressed. And among other things, your muscle mass decreases. Muscle is one of your main energy storage sites. You get atrophy of muscle, myopathy. For extremely complex reasons, you're using your energy really inefficiently. For insanely complex reasons, you're now more at risk for adult onset insulin-resistant diabetes. Now, adult onset diabetes is one of those interesting diseases that our great-great-great-great-grandparents never even dealt with. This is a disease of getting older in a typically westernized way, putting on weight, getting more sedentary, and everything down to the molecular level that goes wrong in your cells with adult onset diabetes. Stress exacerbates the process. Same punchline at the cardiovascular level. If a lion is chasing you and your blood pressure is 180 over 120, you're not suffering from high blood pressure, you're saving your life. On the other hand, if your blood pressure is 180 over 120, every time you're stuck in traffic or something, you're not saving your life. You are suffering from stress-induced hypertension. And you do that chronically enough, and you're going to damage your cardiovascular system. Okay, 30 seconds on stress and heart disease. What's the scenario we all know about? Guy gets horrible news and he's wailing about something and he suddenly clutches his chest in pain, keels over dead, sudden cardiac arrest. This has never happened. This is like a movie plot. This never occurs in real life. Instead, what actually happens requires you to have like arcane knowledge of high school physics explaining why like toilet bowl plumbing wears out after a while. You got a tube and you got fluid moving through the tube. And by definition, if the fluid is moving through with more force, elevated blood pressure, you begin to get fluid turbulence pounding away on the walls of your blood vessels, causing little bits of pitting and scarring and tearing. And then you get inflammation there. And then that's exactly where like glucose and cholesterol and fat wants to glom onto to clog your arteries. Where's the glucose and cholesterol and fat coming from? That's the stuff you're mobilizing into your circulation in the previous slide. So you get this synergistic double whammy here between the metabolic stress response and the cardiovascular, setting you up for the #1 killer in this country, cardiovascular disease.
Okay, so I'm going to go back to showing a couple more tabs because he's hitting back on what we talked about before. And I just want, because there's a few more people in here, new people, so I'm going to go back. So when he's talking about that, we were looking at the top 10. This is the, according to the World Health Organization, you know, the WHO cares about us. I'm going to start using that. Who cares about us? They talk about these are the top things, and every one of these is their doing, their wars, their fights, their foods, their commercials, their news, their movies, their reality TV shows, their products that don't work, their packaging that you can't fucking open for your 3-year-old at Christmas. It's all their stuff, their jobs, their employers that are dickheads, their big business, their products that never fucking work, their taxes, their stealing, their banks, they're losing, their football teams. They're the things that cause us this, the snacks we eat while we watch the football games. The smoke and the tobacco that they gave us to tell us we'd be cool and sexy. And everyone will like you. And not only that. So let's see, Lucky Strike. Oops. I'm going to have to do that. Where is it? It's one of the Lucky Strike. It says, are you stressed out? Try Lucky to anxiety. I bring relief. At the dentist's office. I'm so nervous to go into the dentist's office. Look at his face. It's frowled. You can't see it, can you? There it is. Anxiety. It's a Lucky Strike. Cigarettes. I mean it. Anyway. Or drink coffee. There's another idea. So these stress related, every one of these things is their doing. It's their fault. The #1 most prescribed medication treats hyperthyroidism or an underactive thyroid disease. And what is the thyroid? The stress and your thyroid. What's the connection? Pray. Pray hard. The connection is what? They work in tandem. Tandem. Okay, and so let me see where I've got the disorder. Okay, so or is it this one? Okay, so the function of your autonomic system. So this is what he's talking about here. So what is it? What is the autonomic nervous system? The autonomic nervous system regulates a variety of body processes that take place without conscious effort. The autonomic system, our fear of autonomy, is the fear we're conquering now as a species. Moving towards the fear of rejection. You're going to see that. That's what social scores are. Sniff it. It's on its way. The autonomic system is part of the peripheral nervous system. What that is responsible for regulating involuntary body functions such as our heartbeats, blood flow, breathing, and our digestion. And this system is further divided into 3 branches: the sympathetic system, the parasympathetic system, and the enteric nervous system. Enteric. Is that right? Sure. The autonomic nervous system is also made up of a third component known as the enteric nervous system. Damn, R looks like an N. Fuck you. What is this bold type? What is that classic typewriter type? Font. Typewriter font, which is confined to the gastrointestinal tract. And that's where you're going to get the IBS, the Crohn's disease, and all of those diseases that are coming together. That's where they're being attacked. The parasympathetic division of the autonomic nervous system helps maintain normal body functions and conserves physical resources. This division also performs such tasks as controlling your bladder, depends, slowing down your heart rate, pacemakers. No, they got medications for that. Dick pills came out of that, and constricting your eye pupils. Oh my God. They can also give you night vision now. The sympathetic division of the autonomic nervous system regulates the fight or flight response, the thing we feel when we are stressed out, like during the loosey-goosey crisis. This division also performs such tasks as relaxing the bladder, speeding up heart rate, and dilating the eye pupils as well. And how does it work? Well, the autonomic nervous system operates by receiving information from the environment and from other body parts or parts of the body. The sympathetic and parasympathetic systems tend to have opposing actions in which one system will stimulate a response where the other will inhibit it. And now we're talking AI research papers on that shit. Traditionally, stimulation has been thought to take place through the sympathetic system, while inhibition was thought to occur via the parasympathetic system. However, many exceptions to this have been found. Today, the sympathetic system is viewed as a quickly responding system that mobilizes the body for action, where the parasympathetic system is believed to act much more slowly to dampen responses. You've got the tortoise and the hare. For example, the sympathetic nervous system will act to raise blood pressure, while the parasympathetic nervous system will act to lower it. And the two systems worked in conjunction to manage the body's responses depending on the situation and need. Let me take a side note. I just thought of something. You know, the tortoise and the hare. I said that flippantly, but damn, that was quite an interesting thought that I had. Because if they had worked together, could have got there faster. And what I mean by that is if the rabbit had helped the turtle along the way, like carried it or drug it or pulled it, and then the tortoise could have walked and allowed the rabbit to take a break and catch its breath and have a little glass of tea while they kept going. In other words, nobody had to ever stop driving. And I just thought, well, that's interesting. I've never heard that part of the nursery rhyme be thought of. The idea that if they had figured out a way to work together, they could have both reached the finish line together. Anyway, if, for example, you're facing a threat and need to flee, the sympathetic system will quickly mobilize your body to take action. And once the threat has passed, the parasympathetic system will then start to dampen these responses. slowly returning your body to its normal resting state. The functions of the autonomic system and controls a variety of internal processes, including digestion, blood pressure, heart rate, urination and defecation, pulmonary response, breathing, your respiratory rate, sexual response, don't forget your dick pills, body temperature, your metabolism, electrolyte balance, drink your Gatorade, production of body fluids, including your sweat and saliva, and emotional responses. And the autonomic nerve pathways connect different organs to the brain stem and spinal cord. There are also two key neurotransmitters or chemical messengers that are important for communication within the autonomic nervous system. And they are, I'm not going to be able to say these guys, so I'm not even going to try. But one that starts with an A is often used in the parasympathetic system to have an inhibiting effect. Hey, flat accord music, how are you? I was just thinking about you the other day. Norepinephrine often works within the sympathetic system. Ooh, I just got dizzy. I got excited. That's what happens to me. To have a stimulating effect on the body. See, I got so excited to see you, Flat Earth, you made me get a little dizzy for a second. I mean, flat music chord. Fuck me. All right. Jesus, the potential problems of people who suffer from the disorder that I suffer from. Clearly, you can see it now. When the parasympathetic and sympathetic components of the autonomic nervous systems become out of sync, people can experience an autonomic disorder, also called dysautonomia, and that is what I have. There are numerous types of autonomic disorders. Now, I tell you this because I'm not the only one that has it. Many veterans have it. Many survivors of traumas have it. We also have things like fibromyalgia, Crohn's disease, and a lot of other things, chronic Lyme. And apparently, long COVID is popping in to take part of that list as well. And if you want me to do a chat on the connection with long COVID and our DNA, I can do that for you and back it up with research. I think I've done it maybe once before, but never like on its own. And so these are the things that happen. And these disorders, like just a lot of, a pure autonomic, you can read that, acute, you get these different types. And then these disorders can also occur alone or as a result of other conditions that cause disruption in the autonomic nervous system, including age. So your age has to do with this, which is another reason why they want everyone to have it, because they need to cure it for their longevity research, Peter Thiel. Do you see why I find all this interesting? This all goes to our DNA. Why do they want your DNA? Why do they want you to sign up for their tests? Why do they want your 23andMe? Your alcohol and drug abuse also disrupts this system. Hey, they're checking everybody out on that. You can get autoimmune disease, which would cause you to be more susceptible to illnesses. You're more susceptible to cancers, chronic fatigue syndrome, diabetes, Parkinson's disease, peripheral neuropathy, spinal cord disorders, and trauma and symptoms are. If you or someone you love has experienced disruptions in the autonomic nervous system, you may experience one or more of the following symptoms. Now think about yourself and people in your life and ask yourself, do they suffer from any of these symptoms? Some people experience one cluster of symptoms at a time and another set of symptoms at other times. The symptoms can be fleeting, unpredictable, or triggered by a specific situation or an action, like a gunfire or a sneeze, like after ingesting certain foods or standing up too quickly. Difficulty emptying your bladder, disturbing aches and pains, dizziness, lightheadedness upon standing? Do you often stand up and go, "Ooh, I got up too fast, so I'm a little dizzy"? Do you sit there for fucking hours on the toilet trying to piss and it's just like won't stop? Do you have just aches and pains randomly? What the fuck was that? I have that one. What the fuck was that? What is this? Is this my kidney? Is this my liver? It's on the right side. What is this that's causing me problem? Do you have erectile dysfunction? Do you faint or even actual fainting spells? I have that one as well. Do you have fatigue? A lot of chronic fatigue syndrome, CFS, all those commercials that they try to sell you medications for. That's a stress disorder. It's caused by them. The very people who are selling you the medications are the very people who are making you sick with it. Do you have gastrointestinal symptoms? Guess who caused that for you? Are you suffering from high blood pressure, low blood pressure? Guess who caused that for you? Are you sweaty, or do you have a lack of sweat, or are you real sweaty? Guess who gave that to you? Do you have numbness and tingling in your fingers? Do your extremities fall asleep? Do you have pins and needles? Guess who gave you that? Do you suffer with extreme anxiety and depression? One guess. Do you have tachycardia? I have tachycardia. Yeah. Heart palpitations, where your heart feels like it's beating out of its chest for a minute, and then another time can't find your fucking pulse. Your breathing is so shallow. Do you have urinary incontinence? Are you doing your Kegels? But they can treat you. Don't worry. Don't worry, because they gave it to you. They indeed had the remedy. There is currently no cure. But depending on this type of disorder, there are ways to treat the symptoms. And I'll show you some of them. People around, oh, that's the other one. Hang on. Here it is. Okay, so dysautonomia. You're going to start seeing ads for these. I'm telling you the future right now. It refers to a group of medical conditions by problems with the autonomic nervous system. The ANS is part of your nervous system, controls involuntary heart functions like your heartbeat, breathing, and digestion. And what is it? And who might get it? Look at all these people that are going to get it. And secondary dysautonomia can occur in the following issues. Diabetes, they're going to have dysautonomia. Parkinson's, do you see all these? Do you have rheumatoid arthritis or arthritis at all? Do you have any of these? Do you have Crohn's disease or ulcerative colitis? I know I see lots of those commercials. Do you suffer with celiac disease? Do you have Chiari malformation? I do. Do you have Ehlers-Danlos syndrome? I also do. Do you have any vitamin B or E deficiencies by any chance? Or do you have HIV, which we gave you, and Lyme disease, which we also gave you? What are the causes? These are the functions. It goes your blood pressure, your breathing, your digestion, your heart rate, your kidney function, your pupil dilation and constriction, your sexual function, and your body skin and temperature control. All these things are affected by this system, and they're giving a system that is brought on by stress. And they're handing us stress hand over fist. And I'll go back to the video and let him continue to tell you how this stress and how it has effects on our body.
Now, this link between stress and heart disease is so solid that it accounts for the most famous personality profile in all of medicine. And it's one where basically if you're coming out to a lecture on a perfectly nice evening to be outside taking a walk instead, I suspect it applies to like 80% of the people in this room, which is those of us in here who have type A personality. Okay, type A personality. Type A was first described in the 1950s by a pair of cardiologists in San Francisco, Friedman and Rosenman. Here was their original formulation. time-pressured, hostile, impatient, low self-esteem, joyless striving. Okay, like 90% of us. And what they observed back there in the 50s was if this was your personality profile, you were more at risk for heart disease. Cardiologists hated these guys. You're some like Eisenhower cardiologist, and all you're thinking about is like blood lipids and heart valves. And here are these guys saying, no, you need to sit down your patient and talk to them. Christ, who wants to talk to their patients and talk to them and say, okay, so suppose you're in the supermarket and you pick the line that's moving slowly. Do you go berserk at that point? That's got something to do with heart disease? Total resistance to the concept. And it wasn't until the 1980s that enough studies had been done that it became clear type A is for real big time. If you have type A personality, you are more at risk for cardiovascular disease than if you smoke, than if you are overweight, than if you have elevated cholesterol levels, a huge risk factor. Now, what became clear by the 80s was the critical component in the type A profile, the piece that is the one that contributes to the cardiovascular disease. And it's a term now that is used in the field if you have toxic hostility. Toxic hostility, this attributional style where everything that happens around you is proof that they're out to get you more than everyone else, and the only thing to do is watch your back 24/7 and keep a knife ready. This is the style where you're in the supermarket and you've picked the slow line and you want to kill the son of a bitch kid behind the cash register. Come on. How do you know I have a 1 o'clock meeting trying to screw me up? No, don't ask the old lady how she is today. Come on. I'm going to die someday. If this is what you're doing, instead of checking out the Elvis sightings in the National Enquirer, your blood pressure is going to go up. And if this is what you're doing every time somebody could have held the elevator door open for you but didn't, if you're doing this 40 times a day, you're going to pound away at your blood vessels set up for cardiovascular disease. And these days, the main question in that field is, insofar as you are toxically hostile, what's worse for your heart? Expressing those toxic emotions or keeping them repressed inside? What's clear is expressing them is worse for everybody else's cardiovascular health, but what is the cost of repressing strong physiological emotions? So that's an area of a lot of ongoing research. Okay, so that's stress and heart disease. Actually, how did those guys first figure out about type A personality, given how much that was coming out of left field? And I actually got to hear this story some years ago out of the horse's mouth himself. Meyer Friedman, the cardiologist who first described type A, died a few years ago in his early 90s, saw his last patient a week before he died, was working full-time at a cardiology unit at UCSF Medical Center. As he used to say, I'm still type A, but I'm a type A tortoise now. And here's the story he would tell. In the 50s, he and his partner had this cardiology practice. Everything was going great, except for this one weird thing, which is they were spending a fortune having to reupholster the armchairs in the waiting room. What's this about? Who knows? Whatever. It's part of the overhead. Every month this upholsterer comes and there's a chair or two that needs to be fixed. 1 month, the upholsterer is out on vacation. Replacement upholsterer comes in, takes one look at the chairs and discovers type A personality. He says, what is wrong with your patient? Nobody wears out chairs this way. And they have one of them left. And as you can see here, the front 2 inches of the armrests and the seat cushions are totally shredded, and the rest of the chair is perfectly fine. It's like every night there's like dwarf beavers in there clawing away the chair. What is this? This is the type A profile. This is somebody with type A personality. This is what they do to a chair when they're waiting in the waiting room with their cardiologist to hear if there's bad news or not. This is not just figuratively, but literally sitting on the edge of your seat and squirming and clawing and all of that. This is what somebody who's type A does to a chair in that circumstance. Okay, so what happens at that point if science is working right? And Friedman should grab him and like, good God, man, what you've discovered, or like midnight conferences between upholsterers and cardiologists, or teams of idealistic young upholsterers sweeping across America and coming back with the news that no, you don't find chairs like these in podiatrists' offices. That's what should have happened. What happens instead? Here's where 90-year-old Dr. Friedman starts looking all sheepish. He says, He says, I told my nurse, get this man out of here. I'm this important cardiologist. I can't waste my time with him. Give him this damn check. Get him out of my face. He was too type A to listen to the guy. And it wasn't until about 5 years later that he collaborated with these psychologists, and back came the type A profile. And they said, oh my God, the upholsterer, he was right. To this day, they have no idea who that guy was. Now, let's see. It is late afternoon in San Francisco. I'm willing to bet there's some bar in San Francisco right now where there's like this 110-year-old retired upholsterer. And get this guy going, and he's going to go on and on about how he discovered type A personality, exactly what occurred. So one of the dark chapters in my profession. Okay, moving on, digestion. Shut down your digestive system for 2 minutes running for your life. It's not a big deal. Shut it down chronically, and there's all sorts of gastrointestinal disorders you're more at risk for. Most famously, ulcers. Back to Selye in the 1930s, the first stress-related disease. Stress causes ulcers, stress causes ulcers, canonical knowledge. Everybody knows this. And then about 25 years ago, there's this revolution in ulcerology. Turns out there's a bacteria called Helicobacter pylorus. Turns out the bacteria is responsible for about 90% of ulcers in the West. It gets into your stomach, it generates oxygen radicals and blows holes in the walls of your stomach. It's a bacterial disorder. This was an enormous contribution. The two guys who discovered it gets the Nobel Prize. Amazing. The evening this is announced, every gastroenterologist on earth goes out that evening and celebrates. This is the greatest news they've ever heard, because they're not going to have to sit down their patients and make eye contact and say, do you have any stress? It's got nothing to do with stress. Here's some antibiotics. Get out of my office. It's got nothing to do with stress. It's got everything to do with stress, because only 10% of people with the bacteria get the ulcer. You've got to have the bacterial risk factor, but you've got to have a lifestyle risk factor overlapping as well, stress. Stress does not cause ulcers. The bacteria does. What does stress do? When you got an ulcer beginning to start, your stomach's reasonably good at repairing it, at rebuilding the wall there before the ulcer gets troublesome, unless you're chronically stressed. And every day your stomach walls are saying, do it tomorrow, do it tomorrow. It feels like we're being chased by a predator. Psychological stress shuts down the reparations there. So here we have a classic example of interactions between the organic causes of disease and the psychogenic. Stress is still very relevant to making sense of ulcers. Next, growth. Shut down growth for 3 minutes while you're running for your life, not a big deal. Our theme by now, shut it down chronically. This can be problematic, especially if you were a kid. All kids are big long-term building projects. And for reasons of psychological stress, you keep saying, do it tomorrow, do it tomorrow. You can impair growth. And at an extreme, you have one of the truly bizarre outposts of medicine, a disease of kids who stop growing for reasons purely of psychological stress, known as psychogenic dwarfism, psychosocial dwarfism, stress dwarfism. These are kids who are years behind the normal growth rates, and there's no disease. They're not malnourished. There's no parasites. You check their bloodstream, there's like no growth hormone. You give them synthetic growth hormone, nothing happens. The whole system is shut down. And at that point, you start poking around in their background, and often out comes some appalling psychological stressor. And the amazing thing is, get them out of that stressful setting, technical term, do a parentectomy on them, and growth will resume at that point. This is incredibly well understood how this works. Open up any.
Okay, so before he keeps going, I'm going to stop right here and I'm going to show you a tab. Because, I'm predicting this is happening on a mass scale. So while I was listening to that, I just had the idea, I know our fertility rates are going down. Our infertility is going up, right? And so I thought, is there are humans getting shorter by any chance? As he's just said to me that, people that are under stress suffer from this thing. And he's about to tell you that you can change it by giving them lots of love here in just a minute. But I just asked the question, I posed the question, are humans as a species getting shorter? Well, turns out we are. So people around the world are getting shorter, a new study finds. This is from 2016. Human history is a tale of upward trajectories, more people, more wealth, more inventions, longer lifespans. But humans seem to have plateaued in one area and may be going down. According to a new study from Imperial College in London, the average human is getting shorter. That's what I think of that. The report looked at 1,472 studies from more than 200 countries that included the measured heights of 18.6 million people between 1896 and 1996. Overall, the average human height seemed to have peaked about 30 to 40 years ago. So, guys, look at you, the tallest. Yeah, you guys are giants now. The tallest human in the report are Dutchmen born before 2000. The shortest were Guatemalan women born before 1900. So, these are the things that make me think what was going on in their country when they were growing up and compared to what was going on in their country when they were growing up. Iranian men and South Korean women saw the biggest height gains in this period. Ultimately, the relative decline in height isn't substantial or definitive. Humans could conceivably keep growing if the conditions are right, which he's about to describe. So what's behind the decline? There are several factors at play. First, human height is heavily influenced by environmental factors, such as nourishment in the womb and early infancy. So the gradual climb of global height correlates with gains in nutrition seen globally. So if you're eating well, not eating McDonald's all the time. See, they don't do it all. They just don't starve you. They do it slowly. They have Munchausen by proxy. They just poison you enough to get you sick and then tell you they can make you feel better with their magic medicine. Agricultural breakthroughs in the 20th century led to tremendous strides in ending hunger. Where? I don't know. Anyway, you get my drift. And he's going to talk about, for example, the fertility rate in India, where stunting from malnutrition is rampant. Why are our fertility rates going down? Because we've been packing McDonald's and birth control pills and medications and Tylenol and dildos and condoms and abortions and who the fuck else knows inside of our bodies. And that's why. Their stuff is why. And there you go. I submit. Are people getting shorter? Well, this guy's about to tell you how that can be accomplished through stress. So if a study is coming out and saying people are getting shorter, and I've been looking around the world lately and I see a lot of fucking stress, and I can only imagine that this will in fact continue. So now I go back to the video. I find it quite interesting. And here we go.
The textbook of endocrinology, go to the chapter on growth, and I guarantee there will be the obligatory picture of the stress dwarfism kid. You know, those pictures of stunted kid who's like naked in front of the growth chart with a rectangle over the eyes, and turn the page, and I guarantee there's the obligatory follow-up picture. The kid in a different environment 2 years later, he's like 6'14", he's playing for the NBA. It's everything's, there's still the rectangle and nakedness, but everything else gets better. And what you see there is, this is the system with an amazing capacity to recover. Remarkable cases of this. For example, this was a case report a few years ago. This was a child brought in from an extremely abusive psychological setting into New York Hospital with stress dwarfism, and is documented in the paper. At the time he came into this pediatric unit, 0 growth hormone in his bloodstream. Over the next few months, he became very close with one nurse there, and this was like the first normal emotional relationship of his life. After a couple of months, normal growth hormone levels for his age. At that point, the nurse goes on vacation. By the end of her 2-week vacation, he's back down to 0. Nurse comes back. A week later, he's back up to there. Think about this. The rate at which this child was depositing calcium in his bones could be entirely predicted by how safe and loved he was feeling in the world. You can't ask for a much better example of what's going on here affects every outpost in the body. Now, the issue with stress dwarfism, amid people understanding exactly which hormones are doing what, the issue, of course, becomes how common is this disease? If you were shorter than average and you were not obviously malnourished as a kid, are you a victim of stress dwarfism? Did your parents do that to you? No, this is not like, oh, very stressful childhood, we were moving all the time. This is not like acrimonious divorce. This is nightmare psychopathology. This is the police and the social workers breaking down the door of an apartment and finding the kid chained to the radiator and smeared in excrement and just nightmare stuff, and get the kid out of that setting and there's recovery. The clinical consensus is this is a once in a career disease that you see extremely rare. Except it's not so rare. It pops up all over the place. Kids in war zones, kids in areas of civil strife. A research assistant of mine and I think we've got the data to show that kids who wound up in the Japanese-American internment camps in World War II had mild stress dwarfism. It pops up all over the place. One classic study in the 60s, looking at rites of passages from cultures all over the planet. Rites of passages, in one culture, they take you out of the desert and stake you down and cover you in poison ants. And some other culture, you play the piano for your grandmother and her friends, or whatever's done in your tribe. They did like 80 tribal comparisons. They controlled for genetics. Back comes the finding, stressful rites of passages during the first few years of life, 2 inches shorter as an adult. Big effect. Let me tell you about the single creepiest example of stress dwarfism I've ever heard of. If for some inexcusable reason you ever find yourself reading chapter after chapter about growth hormone, you're going to notice there's a weird thing, which is a lot of the chapters make reference to Peter Pan. Some quote from Peter Pan or some snide comment about Tinkerbell. I'd seen this for years. I had no idea what this was about until one day I stumbled on an explanation. And this was a chapter about the psychological regulation of growth, and it was talking about stress dwarfism, gave the following case history. 8-year-old boy growing up in Victorian England in the 1870s. One day he sees his beloved older brother killed in front of him in an accident. This destroys the family. There were no other siblings. The father was like emotionally non-existent. This was the mother's favorite child. And in this Victorian swoon, she takes to her bed with the shades drawn for the next 10 years. This kid growing up in this horrible emotional isolation, he goes into the bedroom with a tray of food for his mother, and she's saying, "Oh, David, David, is that you? David, have you come to me? Have you, David, the dead son? David, are you finally, oh, it's only you." Growing up being only you. Apparently, the only thing she ever spoke to him about was this idea she grabbed onto, which was, if David had to die, he'll always be my perfect little boy who never grew up and became a man who didn't need his mother anymore. He'll always be my perfect little boy because he didn't grow up, didn't grow up, didn't grow up. This kid hears this with a vengeance. Middle-class family, no evidence of disease or malnutrition. Boy stops growing there at age 8. Lives to age 60, 4'10" as an adult, unconsummated marriage, incredible example of stress dwarfism. And then the chapter concludes by informing us that as an adult, this was the author of the much beloved children's classic, Peter Pan. This was J.M. Barrie, the guy who wrote Peter Pan, who was incredibly screwed up. This guy, all he did was crank out book after play after novella about boys who die and come back as ghosts and marry their mothers. His private journals were full of sadomasochistic fantasies about little boys. This guy spent the rest of his life dealing very unsuccessfully with his stress dwarfism. So think about that the next time you see Johnny Depp up on a movie. Okay. Next, reproduction. Your gonads are not going to be working very well if you were chronically stressed. If you were a female mammal of virtually any species, if you were chronically stressed, your cycles will become irregular, lengthened, they may stop altogether. Stress-induced amenorrhea, stress-induced anovulation, and people understand exactly how those work, which hormones are working at the brain, at the pituitary, at the ovaries, at the uterus to shut things down. Let me tell you about one of those steps, because it's got to do with a very weird thing that female mammals do, including human females, which is they secrete a certain amount of male sex hormones into the bloodstream. hormones that are related to testosterone, androgen-type hormones. They come out of the adrenal glands, not a ton of the stuff, maybe 5% the levels you would see in the male. Nonetheless, you got to get rid of it. Unfortunately, female mammals come with this enzyme in fat cells that takes circulating androgens and does biochemistry 101 and converts them to estrogens. Great, perfect, problem solved. Everyone lives happily ever after. What if you're stressed? What if you're stressed like the locusts have come and eaten your crops and you're subsisting on 800 calories a day? What if you're slowly starving? Your fat stores are slowly getting depleted. And at some point, you have too little functional fat cells to do the androgen to estrogen conversion. One problem is there's now a little bit less estrogen in the bloodstream. Bigger problem is the androgen levels build up there, and that shuts down every step in the system. That's why starvation shuts down ovulation. That's why voluntary starvation, anorexia, does the same. And that's why some women who do massive, massive amounts of exercise will stop ovulating as well, because you get below a critical fat muscle ratio there. Now, this is something that's been studied at length. In girls, for example, it's always studies of very serious ballet dancers or gymnasts. What you see is significant delay in the onset of puberty. One study, for example, this was done on the Olympic gymnastics squad from Romania, you know, those 60-pound 15-year-olds getting the gold medals all over the place. What was the average age at which these kids started menstruating? 19. 12 and a half is the Western average. Once hitting puberty, women who do tons of athletics is best studied long distance runners, women who run an average of 40 to 50 miles a week. That's typically the range where fat stores are getting below threshold, where you begin to have ovulatory irregularities. I can tell you the exact same story about men. Men who run 40, 50 miles a week, sperm count goes down, there's mild testicular atrophy. Okay. Wait a second, I thought exercise was good for us. Exercise is good for us, and in fact, a lot of exercise is very good for us. That doesn't mean, though, that an insane amount of exercise is insanely good for us. It means at some point, too much of a good thing is just as bad as too little. You've passed a point of homeostatic balance. And all you need to do to get an appreciation for that is imagine you sit down some hunter-gatherer from the Kalahari Desert and say, you know, where I come from, we have so much food and so much free time that sometimes we'll just go run 26 miles in a day for the sheer pleasure of it. And they're going to say, are you crazy? That's stressful. I mean, throughout hominid history, if you're running 26 miles in a day, either you are very intent on eating somebody or somebody's intent on eating you. This is not normal physiology. So we get a cautionary note here. Meanwhile, over at the male end of things, with the onset of stress, down go testosterone levels. Anesthetize a guy, slice into his belly for surgery, 10 minutes later, testosterone is plummeting. First-year male medical students during exam periods, down go testosterone. Drop the rank of a male baboon in the hierarchy, down goes testosterone. Here's a stressor which, thank God, I have no personal experience with at all. But apparently, it's not fun to be in the Marines. Apparently, it's kind of a drag, especially during basic training. This was this classic study, 1970, New England Journal of Medicine, looking at military recruits during basic training, where now on top of everything else, they had to pee into little Dixie cups for the psychiatrist. And back comes the finding, guys in the Marines during their first couple of months of service, they have the circulating androgen levels of like Vatican choir boys. That's how much the system is shut down. Okay, so people understand exactly which stress hormones are working at the brain, the pituitary, and the testes to shut down testosterone synthesis during stress. The question you got to ask at this point is, so what are the consequences of testosterone levels declining during stress? And amazingly enough, the answer is there's no consequences at all. Testosterone turns out to be this vastly overrated hormone. Like basically, all you need is like a thimbleful of the stuff and a couple of sperm and you're in business. You got to knock out like 90% of a guy's testosterone levels to seriously impair fertility. Stress, what does it do? It's its worst, only about a 60% decline. It's not suppressed enough that it makes a difference. The problem during stress is not that testosterone levels go down. The problem is that penises go down. Okay, am I allowed to talk about this in Champaign-Urbana here? Okay, finally, we come to the first useful point in this damn lecture. So how do erections work? Okay, so erections. in order to, I just saw somebody there pick up a pen for the first time this whole lecture. Okay, so how do erections work? In order to have an erection, you gotta have a spinal cord. Now, most of what your spinal cord does is totally boring and make you shake hands and sign checks and foxtrot or who knows what. But then there's the part that does the good stuff. The stuff you normally don't have any control over, stuff that is automatic, like goose flesh and orgasms and pupillary contractions and blushing, things that are automatic and thus run by the automatic nervous system, also known as the autonomic nervous system. Now, the autonomic nervous system comes in two halves. First half, sympathetic nervous system. Emergency, arousal, adrenaline, stress response, all hell breaking loose. Second half, the parasympathetic nervous system. Calm vegetative function. You take a nap, you turn on the parasympathetic nervous system. You eat a big starchy meal, you turn on the parasympathetic nervous system. You get disemboweled by a lion, you turn off the parasympathetic nervous system. It works in opposition to the sympathetic. Okay, so here's the rule. In order to get an erection, you've got to turn on the parasympathetic nervous system. You have to be calm and vegetative. Okay, so you got your erection now. What happens next? Maybe for some social reason having to do with the context that brought about the erection, maybe you start feeling a little bit less calm and vegetative. Maybe your heart rate increases a little. Maybe your breathing rate. Maybe your muscles are starting to do some work. Slowly, you're starting to turn on the sympathetic nervous system. More time goes by. Your heart is racing. Your toes are curling. You're sweating. You're breathing fast. All of that. Eventually, you get to this point where your whole body is screamingly sympathetic, except for this one lone outpost where you're desperately holding on to parasympathetic tone as long as possible. Finally, can't take it anymore. You turn off the parasympathetic. You turn on the sympathetic, and you ejaculate. Okay, so that's how erections work. So what happens during stress? What happens during stress? You're not very calm and vegetative. You can't get the erection, stress-induced impotency. Or you can have a second problem. Suppose you manage to get the erection and you think like, oh no, Donald Trump, who knows what? You accelerate the transition. You accelerate the transition from parasympathetic to sympathetic. The whole thing goes too fast. Either you can't get the erection or premature ejaculation. Incredibly easy for this to occur. Current estimates are 60% of the visits by men in this country going to doctors about erectile dysfunction turn out not to have an organic disease basis, but instead are psychogenic, stress-related. Okay, second useful piece of information. So how do you tell the difference between a case of organic impotency and psychogenic? So guy comes to you, says he hasn't been able to have an erection during sex in the last 6 months, and you're wondering, well, is this stress related or does he have a pituitary tumor, whatever? You take advantage of a weird thing that male primates, including human males, do, which is when they go into REM sleep, rapid eye movement sleep, they get erections. I've no idea why. I've talked to Earth's penis experts. Nobody has an explanation for this. Nonetheless, male primates get REM sleep erections. So here's what you do. The guy who hasn't been able to have an erection during sex in months, what you do is you give him this handy-dandy little penile pressure cuff transducer thingy that he takes home, and just before he goes to sleep, he puts it on the base of his penis and wires it up and satellite relays and 24-hour operators in Bangalore. And the next day you got your answer, which is if this guy hasn't been able to have an erection during sex in the last 6 months, but 30 seconds into his first REM stage, he has a perfectly normal erection, he doesn't have a pituitary tumor, it's stress related. That's how you distinguish between the two. Do you still get the nocturnal erections? If that's the case, it's stress-related. Very easy to, actually maybe this is not so easy because you got this electronic device and it's beeping and the wires and you're so sure it's going to electrocute you. That's a stressor in and of itself. This is what is done in the majority of sexual dysfunction clinics in this country. I kid you not, you take a long string of postage stamps, you lick them at one end, and you wrap them around the guy's penis. And the next morning, if the stamps have been torn loose, the guy had an erection during the night. Can you believe like how elegant this is? Like $5, you get a lab result. It's fabulous. Yeah. Oh, of course, insurance won't reimburse you for the stamps, but still. Maybe Obamacare still has a chance. Okay, so what we see here is another outpost of vulnerability, and perhaps we should hurtle on before I embarrass myself further. Your immune system. Your immune system. So as we heard before, with the onset of stress, you enhance your immune defenses. With chronic stress, something very different occurs. With chronic stress, not only does the immune system go back to baseline, you suppress immunity. With chronic stress, you become immune suppressed. And this is the starting point for just this irresistible syllogism. Insofar as chronic stress chronically suppresses the immune system, chronic stress should set you up for more infectious diseases. And this is the basic premise behind this field that emerged about 25 years ago, psychoneuroimmunology. The notion that what's going on here is affecting your immune defenses. And a quarter century into this field, it's clear that's exactly how it works for all the boring stuff. When you are under stress, the common cold becomes more common. You're at more risk for mononucleosis, for herpes viral flare-ups, reactivation. What's far less clear is what about bigger realms of infectious disease? How about if you have AIDS? Your immune system declining. If you're severely stressed, does it decline even faster? Jury is out on that.
Okay, he said something real interesting right there. He said, let me go back.
You were severely stressed. Does it decline even faster? Jury is out on that one. It seems to have to do with the personality type as an intervening variable. How about the biggest one on everybody's list when it comes to worrying about disease? So what's the relationship between stress and cancer? And everybody knows the answer to that, which is cancer is a stress-related disease. Stress can cause you to have cancer. Stress can cause you to come out of metastatic breast cancer diagnosis where they were asked, so what do you think is the cause of your cancer?
Did I miss it? Anyway, I don't know if I missed it. I'm not very good with this stupid slidey thing. Okay, he was talking about when you have a virus, the flu, when you get sick, mononucleosis. He mentioned that one, mononucleosis. Well, that's where your long COVID is connected. Mononucleosis, what he's talking about there is that if you get mononucleosis and you're under a lot of stress, if you're exposed to that virus and it turns on for you and you actually get mono, and now you're sick with it and you're stressed out, it can cause more damage to your system. You're unable to fight it off, and you end up with long-term issues. There's lots of research about that, and I can share that if anyone is wanting more information, or you can do it yourself. And we can share notes, but I'm not going to, you can just trust me. So, what's interesting about the long COVID is that the long COVID is what they're calling this new thing where if you've gotten the Lucy, the COVID, and you recovered from it, but it took you longer to recover, just like mononucleosis, takes you longer to get over it. You have an almost extreme reaction to it. You're going to hear this one, MECAS, M-A-C-A-S, mast cell activation syndrome. That will be one showing up in everyone's language shortly. And so the long COVID. So with the long COVID, now you're seeing this uptick in this. Well, what's interesting about long COVID and mononucleosis is that they're linked. They're linked to a virus called the Epstein-Barr virus. And the Epstein-Barr virus is something that 95% of the population have in there. All of us have it, except for 5%. And whether or not it gets triggered on and you end up with an illness like, say, long COVID or mononucleosis or herpes or the chicken pox, because they're all in the same family. It's in the herpes virus. It's the herpes virus family is what your Epstein-Barr virus is. So I just asked a question. Well, if COVID is linked to the Epstein-Barr virus. In other words, part of the reason why people are suffering long-term illnesses is because it has triggered this virus, the EBV. And I already know that 95% of the population have that virus in their bodies already, waiting for me to come in and switch on. You're already wired for long COVID or whatever they're testing and getting there. Because if you got long COVID, you know you're at the doctor. You know you're there to test me, doctor, save me, doctor, take my blood more and more and more. And they're learning all about you for the next one. Guinea pigs. Dale knows what I'm talking about then. Absolutely. All right, so I'll go back to this one. And let it play a little bit more, and we'll get to. I'm going to speed it up just a tad though, so I'll let it play for a few minutes at this speed and let everybody, double Dutch in, and then I'm going to turn it up one notch so we can get through it faster. But I do pay attention. I wouldn't share it if I didn't think the rest was highly important, including and not limited to that end where they do some Q&A and some interesting shit at that point too. So stick with me. Okay, here we go.
And by more than a 2-to-1 margin, the most common answer was stress. Too much stress in my life. Stress has virtually nothing to do with cancer. There has never been a decent prospective human study longitudinally that shows that stress increases the risk, reoccurrence, or growth rate of any type of tumor when they're well controlled. There have been all sorts of studies showing how stress can accelerate tumor growth in lab rats. We know how it works. My lab did some of that work, but it turns out these are types of cancers that are completely irrelevant to human cancer. This is a realm where there's not much connection at all. Amid all those things on the right sides of these charts, you need to worry about this is one domain where you don't. Why is it important to emphasize this? Because of all of these highly credentialed quacks who are making a fortune off of cancer patients saying, my special brand of stress therapy will slow down your cancer, stop it, reverse it, credit cards accepted. There's no science to support this. Bad medicine, bad science, bad ethics. This is a domain where you don't have to worry. Okay, so quickly, let's hurtle back to domains where you do have to worry. Okay, so back to stress in your brain. We saw short term does all sorts of great stuff. Chronically, bad news. Chronically, stress will damage a part of your brain called the hippocampus, which is essential for learning and memory. Stress has something to do with failure of memory consolidation there, shrinkage of neurons, disconnecting of synapses, at an extreme killing of neurons, inhibition of the birth of new neurons there. And this is turning out to be relevant to humans in a number of scary realms. People with chronic stress due to PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, combat trauma or sexual abuse trauma. And what you see there is atrophy of the hippocampus, only the hippocampus. The more severe the trauma history, the more atrophy, the more memory problems. Best evidence is this is not reversible. Second syndrome, pertinent to the 10 to 15% of us in this room, destined to have major clinical depression, the poster child in psychiatry of a stress-related disorder. It involves chronically elevated stress hormone levels and scads of studies now showing atrophy of the hippocampus, only the hippocampus. The more severe the depression history, the more atrophy, the more memory loss. And as far as most studies show at this point, this is not a reversible process. Meanwhile, next door to the hippocampus is a brain region called the amygdala. And in the amygdala, things are real different. Hippocampus does learning and memory for you. Amygdala teaches you to be afraid. It does fear. It does anxiety. And while stress is atrophying away those hippocampal neurons, stress is making neurons in the amygdala work better than usual. They expand their connections. The synapses become more excitable. People with PTSD have amygdalas that grow larger than normal. Stress makes it easier for you to associate things with fear that are not actually valid and makes you harder to detect safety signals. This is the link between stress and anxiety. Meanwhile, over in that part of the brain where you're releasing dopamine, which has something to do with pleasure, with the onset of stress, chronic stress, and you're depleted of dopamine. What is this setting us up for explaining the link between stress and depression? The defining symptom of depression is anhedonia. Hedonism, the pursuit of pleasure, anhedonia, the inability to feel pleasure. This is the neurochemical link why chronic stress is a major precipitating factor for depression. So, okay, if you're still awake at this point, you should be depressed as hell. Okay. So amid that, it must seem like a miracle that any of us are still alive. Actually, let me make this worse. One last stress-related disease. This is like stress for 2000. How many of you have heard of a disease called idiopathic alopecia areata? Okay, a few hands. This is the profoundly rare state of somebody being so traumatized by something that over the next few days, their hair turns white and falls out. This is for real. People understand like what the immune system is doing to the hair follicles there. It's real. It's a once in a career disease, but nonetheless, this is for real. Look at this. You're chronically stressed. You get high blood pressure. You get diabetes. You get flatulent. Your sex life is ruined. Your brain gets damaged and your hair falls out. How is it any of us are still functioning here? Why haven't we all collapsed into puddles of stress-related disease? And the critical thing is most of us don't. Most of us cope. And what's been clear from the first day of the field with Cellier is some individuals cope with stress better than others. What I want to spend the last couple of minutes on is how we understand this to work. Why do some bodies, and more importantly, some psyches deal better with stress than others? Okay, so if we're talking about individual differences in stress responsiveness here, we're not talking about physical stressors. Finish this lecture, go outside, unexpectedly be gored by an elephant, and you're gonna have a stress response. There's no way, you can't reframe your experience and grow from adversity or who knows what. You're gonna have a stress response. Finish the lecture, go outside, and have kind of a tense, ambiguous interaction with someone, and only some of us will have a stress response. What is it about that gray zone of psychosocial interactions that is more stressful for some individuals than others? What we're asking here is, what is it that makes psychological stress stressful? And remarkably, a massive literature stretching back decades shows what precisely are the building blocks of psychological stress. Okay, here's a schematic summary of a gazillion studies, what they would sort of show. Take a lab rat, put him in the cage, every now and then he gets a shock, mild shock, and nonetheless, with enough of them, this is stressful. Blood pressure goes up, heart rate goes up, risk of ulcer goes up, as shown here. You're giving the rat a stress-related disease. Now, second line, in a second cage, there's another rat. Psychology jargon, the second rat is yoked to the first rat. Every time the first rat gets a shock, so does the second. Same intensity, same duration, same everything. According to Cellier in 1930, both of their bodies being knocked out of homeostatic balance, the exact same extent, except for a critical difference, which is every time that second rat gets a shock, it can go over to the other side of the cage where there's another rat, and it can bite the crap out of it. And you know what? That rat's not going to get an ulcer. The guy he's biting is going to get one, but this one doesn't. He has an outlet for his frustration. Third line. Now we have in the second cage a second.
It's important to know what he's saying there. He says the rat runs over and can bite the other rat, and he's an outlet for his frustration. These are Karens. And those people that just pop out and punch you in the face, and you're gonna see that. That's another smell. That's the purge coming. So you mix all this together. You get the stress that causes people to feel confused. Confusion causes people to react instead of have calmness about their actions. They react quickly. They're on edge. They're paranoid. They're scared. And now you know why they want to get the weapons away from everybody. It ain't to protect it. It'll be to protect us in the end, but they want to get them away from as much as us as possible because they don't want us to have more than a handgun or two. We can't have what they have because they know what we'll do when we in fact have no outlet. And he's about to describe that. So you snap out if you have an outlet. And if you don't, something else happens. And so you're going to start to see these behaviors popping out in the population because exactly what he's describing, that's what we have to do to stay alive, a instinctual in us. Hey, Beach, nice to have you stop by. Thank you. Okay, here we go.
Second rat getting the same shock, same duration, same intensity, same everything, but each time he gets a shock, he can go over and there's a bar of wood that he can gnaw on with his teeth, and he doesn't get an ulcer. He has a hobby. Okay.
And that's important. He has a hobby. DIY much? Are you coloring in coloring books? It's very good for your stress. Buy our special markers and our special crafting coloring books, and you can color too. Do you want to paint by number? We'll give you everything you need at Lowe's and Home Depot. And we'll even tell you what looks good together, how to measure your lines. Come in and we'll show you how you can put that fence post in or how you can redo and restain your cabinets. Don't worry about being bored. We got plenty of things for you to spend your money on to keep you from getting stressed out. You need a hobby, Pinterest. Hobby stores, hobby investments are a good investment right now. Not going to make you billions, but you definitely want to get in on it. Want to bet on that horse. And that's what he's talking about right there. And then when he was talking about the biting and the mouth, was another point I was going to make. It's known in daycare centers, the stage that we have the most fear of being our body invasion. And that's our babiness, our toddlerness. We start movement. And that's because things can come at us. Bees are flying around and flies, movements, butterflies become scary, movement. Other children become scary, movement, because they crawl over and bite you. And in preschools or daycare centers, I would say daycare centers, I don't even know the difference anymore. There used to be a difference, but there really isn't. They're just a place to corral your children for the day while you go shopping. And they'll bite each other. You'll have literally an outbreak of biting, you know? And so because one finally reaches out and bites, then it's infectious, and then the next one bites, and the next one bites, and they just go around the room biting each other. And they can't help it. It's their frustration from having toys ripped out of their hands all the time. See, they aren't used to that. At that age, they don't understand why you have to come and why some other little critter has to come over there and yank the block I was just numbing on. It's my block. So they push each other and they bite each other. They fight. You took it from me. We actually have a bunch of adults right now taking things from us. So you're going to see some biting from the other toddlers. That's the human beings. The human beings. You didn't hear me. That's them. Okay, I'll be quiet again.
Now, the next line. What we have here is same shock, same intensity, same everything, but 10 seconds before each shock, the second rat, a little warning light comes on, and the rat doesn't get an ulcer. For the same external stressor, we are more protected when we get predictive information. When is it coming? How bad is it going to be? How long is it going to last? And we all know that principle. Every time we ask the dentist, how much more drilling? And we all know the difference between the dentist that says 2 more bits and we're done, and the one that says, yeah, it could be weeks you're going to be here. And when the dentist says 2 more bits of drilling, bad news, you're not done yet. Good news, the second that second bit of drilling is over with, you're safe. For the rat in the first line, any second, you can be a half second away from the next shock. Next line. This is a rat that's been trained to press a lever. By pressing the lever, it decreases the likelihood of getting a shock. Today, the rat is yoked to the first one, getting the same shocks as the first guy, but there's a lever in there. The lever's disconnected. The lever has done nothing whatsoever, but the rat doesn't know it. So he's in there pounding away the lever, saying, this is great, just imagine how many shocks I'm getting. Otherwise, he thinks he has control. For the same external stressor, a sense of control makes things less stressful. Jumping ahead to the final line, shock a rat, and now
Okay, now pin that. If you actually listen to what he's saying there, I probably won't pull it back up just to pull that part. But in the next chat that I'm going to do, I'm going to show you that what he's talking about with that rat and the little girl, they're now actually doing on people. Not only now doing it, they've already done it. And that goes on to your AI, that connecting. So it's quite, oh, it's a fun one. If you didn't know that it was happening, we already knew, but I found some interesting proof of it I think you'll enjoy. So back to being quiet.
it goes over to the other side of the cage where there's a rat that it knows and likes, and they groom each other, and it doesn't have a stress response. Wow, science has finally proven that friends are good for your health. Science has proven this big time. When you look at all of behavioral medicine and all of health psychology, there are two of the biggest predictors out there as to mortality rates across all diseases. The first one taps into every one of the factors on this slide, which is never, ever make the mistake of being born into a poor family, because your health is going to pay for it the rest of your life. The link between health and socioeconomic status, very heavily mediated by stress. The second biggest predictor is, if you got a choice in the matter, don't be socially isolated. When you look at the extremes of social isolation versus social affiliation, significant other, others, small group of friends, community group you're intensely involved with, for the same disease impact, almost a threefold difference in mortality rate. And that's after you control for stuff like, ooh, people who live alone just eat Cheetos for dinner and nobody reminded to take their meds. Control for that. And social isolation is an aching stressor for every primate out there, including us, and a huge health risk factor. So what is it that makes psychological stress stressful?
He just said it right there. They know that isolation is a huge stressor. But instead of helping us through our isolation, they demanded we stay isolated, locked us in our rooms, charged us to use everything. And offered nothing to us that might ease the stress a little bit, just a little bit. Nope. We even need you to pay for the masks to donate to the nursing homes. We can't even do that for you, for your grandparents. That's the wake up. I'm sick of hearing people say wake up. Don't wake up. Go back to sleep. Go back to sleep because you're seeing a non-reality. I don't know what you're doing. I think it must be the opposite, because if this is reality, then I need to go back to sleep. I need to go back to sleep if this is the wake up part. And my dreams are way more fun. Anyway, here we go.
For the same external misery, you are more likely to feel subjectively stressed, more likely to turn on a stress response, and more at risk for stress-related disease if you feel like you have no control, no predictability, no outlets for the frustration, if you interpret things as getting worse and you have nobody shoulder to cry on. And basically, this is the place to stop. Because again, none of us are getting ulcers because we're being chased by saber-toothed tigers. None of us are ever going to have to rest to pay the medical cost. And that's the critical point at the end. To the extent that we are smart enough to have invented these psychosocial stressors and then stupid enough to have fallen for them, we all have the potential to instead be wise enough to keep them in perspective. So on that note, thank you for your attention and good luck with your stressors. Wow, I see my mother did manage to call all of you before the lecture today. Thank you.
So
He's still blushing from the erection topic.
So
We'll get back to that.
I wanted to ask you a question. I have a strategy of coping, and I'm not sure it's the best strategy. I experience a lot of stress, and so here's my coping strategy. I always am expecting the worst. So basically, when I'm applying for a grant or something, I'm expecting not to get it. If I'm submitting a paper, I'm expecting it to get rejected. And this is a coping strategy for me because if it turns out that I don't get the grant, then I'm not really let down. And that's, in a way, it helps me predict the stressor. But on the other hand, I'm thinking about it. I'm thinking, well, then I'm always constantly thinking about the worst, and it's kind of a pessimistic attitude. So basically, my question is this a bad strategy?
Yes. I would recommend first just taking out your adrenal glands. That would probably be more effective. Okay, what we have here is the difference between bad outcomes and unpredictable outcomes. The problem with always expecting the worst is you're probably not really expecting the worst. You're expecting maybe your grant won't get a good score. You're not expecting to be disemboweled by your grant review committee. So it's a moderately bad outcome that you're now expecting. And the trouble is when something good happens, it's good, but what it also tells you is, hey, I thought I understood how the world worked, and my model as to what cause and effect is about here is not quite so great, and I blew it on expecting something good to happen. Maybe I'm blowing it also on expecting the really bad stuff to happen. The unpredictability there outweighs the goodness of it. And various classic studies have shown that under circumstances where you give rats a bigger food pellet than they expected for this amount of lever pressing, good news, but whoa, they thought they understood how the world works within the right parameters. That's more stressful because it's telling them they don't really understand how the world works. That's fine for a bigger food pellet, but what else do I understand?
So you're saying when I get the grant, then it's...
Then you have to convince yourself why you knew you were going to all along.
Yeah.
I have a question that maybe reframes the topic, which is we look at stress and its consequences, and there's the inverse of stress, which is sense of well-being or flourishing. And I'm curious in your research if you look at that, and perhaps it's doing these four things really well, but is there a body of work that you can point to, or you're motivated to study around people who seem to be flourishing, who live longer, who seem to cope better?
Okay, this Selye back in the 30s tried to introduce a word that never caught on, which was eustress, E-U-S-T-R-E-S-S, which is good stress, and somehow that never quite became popular. But it was built around the fact that, like, a goal, if you study stress biology or stress psychology or anything, the goal is not to eliminate stress from our lives. Because the trouble is, we love stress. We love stress when it's the right kind. When it's the right kind, we pay good money for it. We like push to see the front to watch like what exciting tournament is happening. We pay good money to get on roller coasters and get terrified. We love stress when it's good. So the question becomes, what constitutes good stress? And it turns out that it's within a fairly narrow parameter. Good stress consists of a stressor that's not too extreme. You get on the roller coaster and you know there's a chance you're going to be made a little bit queasy afterward, not decapitated. It's not too long lasting. It's not for nothing roller coaster rides aren't 3 weeks long. So it's transient, moderate, and most of all, it's occurring in what's overall a benevolent environment. Because when we're feeling safe, we love to give up control and predictability because we love being surprised in safe settings. What do we call that? We call that play.
Did you hear what he just said? I'm going to rewind it because this is very important. That's why I said stick around, because I think you'll like this question and answer. Let me play that for you another time.
Work that you can point to, or you're motivated to study around people who seem to be flourishing, who live longer, who seem to cope better?
Okay, this Selye back in the 30s tried to introduce a word that never caught on, which was eustress, E-U-S-T-R-E-S-S, which is good stress, and somehow that never quite became popular. But it was built around the fact that, like, a goal, if you study stress biology or stress psychology or anything, the goal is not to eliminate stress from our lives. Because the trouble is, we love stress. We love stress when it's the right kind. When it's the right kind, we pay good money for it. We like push to see the front to watch like what exciting tournament is happening. We pay good money to get on roller coasters and get terrified. We love stress when it's good. So the question becomes, what constitutes good stress? And it turns out that it's within a fairly narrow parameter. Good stress consists of a stressor that's not too extreme. You get on the roller coaster and you know there's a chance you're going to be made a little bit queasy afterward, not decapitated. It's not too long lasting. It's not for nothing roller coaster rides aren't 3 weeks long. So it's transient, moderate, and most of all, it's occurring in what's overall a benevolent environment. Because when we're feeling safe, we love to give up control and predictability because we love being surprised in safe settings. What do we call that? We call that play. It's occurring in what's overall a benevolent environment. Because when we're feeling safe, we love to give up control and predictability. Because when we're feeling safe, we love to give up control and predictability.
Did you catch it? And it's all about feeling safe, feeling safe. When we feel safe, we love to give up control and predictability. They're using all of our behaviors against us, which means that we know their playbook. How do we convince everyone else? I don't know. I've been trying for 18 months and I ain't got much luck. But that's exactly what they're doing. They already know if they can make people feel safe, they will give up their control. And so what are they doing? We'll save you. We'll save you. Trump, I'm the savior, the alpha generation, the generation that's going to save us. Peter Pan and Peter Thiel, longevity research. I want to stay young forever. I'm a psychopath. And they know that as children, as elementary school kids, that we will explore our environment more and we will do this, that, and the other if we feel safe. But there's a psychological disorder where they lock you in the basement, and that's how they keep you safe. That's a little bit different. That's an abuse. That's abuse, in case you didn't know. If you're listening and you don't know, that's abuse. You're abused by these people. He included. Because he knows. He knew. He knows. And he's not speaking out. He's not doing what I'm doing. None of these doctors are. Not one psychiatrist can't see the connection between what Gates is doing and Woozon and Woohee and Woozy and Munchausen by proxy. Not one person can see any kind of serial killer, weird spy versus nobody. Nobody can see, huh? No narcissistic psychiatrist that studies narcissism and's written books about it and gone and spoke about it for years and years. None of them can put it together. They don't see what's happening. That seems. And I start assuming that they must not be real. They must all be lies. There's nobody. That's a computer screen. That's just telling me what I need to hear, what I think I'm supposed to hear. I don't know. Weird. Anyway, why are they not coming out? I just want to know why I can't find other people saying what I'm saying when I'm only telling you what they researched. These are the experts in this stuff, in AI and in psychiatry and in psychiatric disorders, and they're defending and protecting the very people that are doing it. And they're so fucking stupid that they can't put it together, or it's like Invasion of the Body Snatchers or something. I'm just finding it so hard to believe that this guy isn't screaming from the rooftops. Look, guys, I just it clicked. Hey, that's what's happening to us through this pandemic. Same thing with Neil Howe, with the generations. That guy knows what we're doing. He knows where it's happening. And you know what his advice is? Just sit back and just wait it out. It'll be fine. Well, fuck you. That's good for you. Well, you got money and your kids, and you're set for fucking life. That's not good for anyone else. I didn't want to hear that. Jesus. I mean, and who can even listen to that come out of these people's mouths and then still research and then still worship them? They just basically said, oh, the WAD, I'm done with this now because clearly you get the picture. I'll end with this one article because it's a short one, and then I'm going to end this stream, and I'll tell you what I've got coming up next. So there was, okay, let me find the video. Nope, not there. Yeah. Okay. I'm going to have to go. I don't know where it's at in here. Oh, no, I know what it is. Never mind. I know what it is. Never mind. I got it. Wasn't a video after all. Okay. All right. So this was an article that I don't know how I got it. Somebody must send it to me, or I think I might have come across it researching. I really don't know. Honestly, somebody probably sent it to me. I should take credit for it. Is this the one? No, it's not that one. Here it is. Yeah, I think someone sent this to me. All right, so can you read this? Okay. So it says this. An error. Health Department says Sydney private school students given the Pfizer vaccine by mistake. Oops. And you continue to read down. Oh, for Pete's sakes. Okay. It says the New South Wales Health Department says an error resulted in 163 year 12 students at one of Sydney's most expensive private schools being given the Pfizer vaccine. St. Joseph College in Sydney, Lower North Shore, confirmed on Tuesday that more than 160 students received their first dose of the vaccine after the state health department approved the school's request. And the school said it was given the go-ahead for the vaccines in May because its boarding school population included Indigenous students and students from remote and regional communities. The senior students were due to have their second shot when school resumed. And the Guardian Australia understands a private girls' school with a large number of boarders has also been given access by New South Wales Health to the Pfizer vaccine, while most under 40s in Australia are ineligible. The Sydney Local Health Department, which is part of NSW Health, said an error had led to an entire year 12 cohort at St. Joseph's being vaccinated instead of just the, what the fuck does that say? What the actual fuck does that say? It led to the entire class and not just. They only wanted the Aboriginals. They only wanted them. This vaccine was specially mixed up and made just for them. And I'll show you in one of my next streams, because I can show you proof that they actually can do this exact thing. And I find it really sick and disturbing that they would blatantly come right on out and say, we didn't mean to get the white kids. Just those AB students. It was agreed that the Aboriginal students would be vaccinated through the state health system at Royal Prince Alfred Hospital's vaccination hub. Through an error, the wider group of boarders in year 12, a total of 163 of them, Dale, students were also vaccinated. And Sydney Local Health District apologizes for this error. Earlier on Tuesday, St. Joseph College Principal Ross Tellington said the college approached Sydney's local health district in May 2021 to inquire about the possibility of vaccinations for students, given that we had a large number of boys who lived in a residential community, which included boys from rural, remote, and Indigenous communities. But instead of getting the herd immunity by giving them all the shot, they really only wanted to give some of them the shot. Now that seems like a targeted attack. And literally, I question how they managed to think that it was okay to publish this article. This seems like something they would have wanted to keep a secret, because I don't know how anyone could have read that and not heard what I heard. Not read what I read. That's sick. Anyway, I think that will do it for me for now. I think I'm finished. But I do have some other stuff. I'll tell you some of my other things I've got. Smart fabrics. I've got Man versus Machine. Billie Eilish and Lady Lesha. Let's see. What are some of my other ones? They're all connected. All connected to the same thing. Oh, loss of identity. Who am I? They're stealing you. They're stealing you. Oh, yeah. And let's see. I've got a few clips from some films and some television series, including Why Gremlins Multiply, Monsters, and all the things that go creep in the night. I can explain them all. Every one of them. And I challenge anyone to come and ask me questions. So, or let me come to your channel and ask me questions because I'm pretty sure I can explain anything and everything that's going on based off of how we view the world at a certain age. So beautiful. And that's what they're doing. That is what they're doing. Now, whether or not they know it, I don't know. They might just be going along because they see the trends. That's what generational studies is. But I'm going to take it one ring out and tell you I can do generational studies from a species perspective. And I can tell you what the future is going to be like for everybody. And here's all the dots. They're right there. Stress, 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 stress. Charge, 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 charge. Da 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 da. Charge. And with that, I'll see y'all later. Get out. Oh, high five, high, high five, high five. Gee. I love you guys, seriously. Okay, thanks for hanging out with me for 2 hours and 34 minutes. If you did the whole time, you're right. You should get a sticker. You lick and high five and Paul and Dale, celiac, and Beach came by. Smash the thumb on your way out. Thumbs up if you're nice. Thumbs down if you're not if you're rotten. And I do have a tab on celiac. I do, actually. It's so interesting that you say such things. Well, it's heat. It's a different thing. Heatyism. Heat. It's a thing. I'll show it to you later. All right. If I missed anybody, I'll see you later. Bye. I have a quick question. Get out of here. No, I'm just kidding. Like, you know that, like, go away. And then they just stand outside the door. Quick question, though. Do you want me to do a doubler? If you give me a couple hours, like if we took a break, did a few things, would you want me to come back here at a later time today and do the AI thing? Or would you rather me wait and do it tomorrow? Awesome. Awesome. Thanks. Thanks. When are you going to go live? Okay. All right. I might do that because I like to do it when it's real fresh on my head. And this is actually a series of multiple dots, like multiple taps I've done just in the last, like, few hours. I did this all, like, real quick. I like to do it when it's real quick in my head. So let's say it's 3:30 my time. Oh. Trying to think of how late I could go because I have dinner. I'll tell you at 3:30. I can come back at 7. I'll put 7:30 tentatively. Is that fair? So that's like in 4 hours. I'll just put 7:30. That's in 4 hours. That gives me plenty of time to have dinner and do all that. And anybody that wants to take a nap, 5 hours, long time, and then I'll see you back then. All right. Bye. She's not real, Dill. I think I can prove she ain't real. There's something not right about that girl. All right.